Sonic Lost World is one of the most forgotten Sonic games. It was a weird shift in gameplay from previous entries, had a vastly different art style and tone that contrasted from what Sonic is all about, all on top of a weird story with completely confusing game mechanics. And I absolutely love it. How's it going, folks? Today we're going to be talking about one of the most polarizing entries in the entire Sonic franchise. What makes this game so polarizing, you may ask? Well, let's take it back to the mid-2000s for some context. The Sonic franchise was in a very bad place, with mediocre release after mediocre release after mediocre blah blah blah. The point is, Sonic Team was in a bad place and were being very experimental during these years leading up to this time by just throwing shit at the wall and just seeing what would stick, with crazy ideas like huge numbers of playable characters, morality systems, broken releases, very bold choice right there, and crappy motion gimmicks. The series was on a downward spiral, even close to dying off completely until 2008's Sonic Unleashed came out. And all they had to do was win over the furries. I mean, all they had to do was both simplify and evolve the core of Sonic's gameplay to what is nowadays known as the boost formula. Basically, it's a much faster style of gameplay compared to previous 3D Sonic games that has a heavy focus on high reaction time and memorization of obstacle placement. This brand new style of gameplay helped birth new life into the franchise and bring it back into the public eye. For a little bit, at least. The boost formula was so popular that the next couple of 3D entries reincorporated the same style of gameplay, all culminating in the masterpiece we now know today as Sonic Generations. After 2011, when Generations was released, it seemed like the series was finally back in a consistently good place, and we no longer had to worry about mediocre releases.
You serious?
The boost formula still had a lot of potential, and people were stoked to see what was next for the Blue Blur. And why am I telling you all of this, you may be asking? Well, what game do you think released right after Sonic Generations? If you said Sonic 4 Episode 2, congratulations, you can stay. If you didn't, leave. I'm not joking, leave, get out of my house, leave, stop, get out of here, what are you doing? Sonic Lost World was the next mainline 3D game that was announced after Generations, back in the summer of 2013, where the boost formula was seemingly completely abandoned in favor of this new, slower-paced gameplay style that was more reminiscent of the gameplay formula pioneered by Sonic Adventure back in 1998. Not only that, but Sonic was running along strange-looking abstract tubes that was reminiscent of Mad Space from SA2. They didn't bring it back in Generations, so they had to put it somewhere, I guess. This game still to this day hasn't beaten the Super Mario Galaxy allegations, and honestly, fair point. It's clear the game was heavily inspired by Mario Galaxy in many ways, but art inspires art, so I've never really had a problem with it personally. You could call it cope if you want. Just because Halo popularized the twin-stick FPS doesn't mean Call of Duty wasn't allowed to use the same control scheme, you know? Maybe not the best comparison, but you know what I mean. We were also introduced to the best new villains in the entire series, the Deadly Six. In fact, I love them so much, I keep a Zavok on hand with me at all times. Weirdly enough, he likes to hang out with the boost formula on weekends. Okay, who am I kidding? I'm a Lost World guy, and even I hate these fucking idiots so much, but we'll get more into it in the actual plot summary. During this time, I wasn't really a big Sonic fan yet, and I still had the potential to be a productive member of society. But I was 13 and was starting to become more internet savvy. I started to realize that video games got announced and shown off on sites like YouTube instead of just TV commercials and the like. So I started keeping up with upcoming Nintendo news and saw Sonic Lost World during a random Nintendo Direct. I can't lie, I got pretty stoked. I hadn't played most of the previous games, so I didn't even know what a boost formula was, so all of the gameplay changes didn't really bother me. Flash forward to Christmas of that year, and that's where it all ended for me. Sayonara, future. So what did I think of the game? Was abandoning the incredibly successful boost formula for something more experimental worth it in the end? Well, considering my current disposition, you could probably make a few assumptions. Let's just jump into the plot and see how our favorite blue shithead misplaced his world, shall we? Our grand tale begins as many others have, with a bald fat man kidnapping animals and shooting 2 children in the face. Now that right there is what I call good cinema. In actuality, Eggman is flying off with an animal capsule to parts unknown while Sonic and Tails are in pursuit after him. Sonic displays the same level of incompetence I do on a daily basis while trying to save the animals, and Eggman shoots a wing off of Tails' plane. And as I've already talked about in a previous video, we already know from every other game in the fucking franchise, Tails is going to crash, yada yada.
More landing! Alright, I can land this.
What?
But it's gonna be bumpy.
Holy shit! Tails is gonna actually land the plane? And you people said his character development regressed in the 2010s. Before Tails lands, though, he points out that he and Sonic just so happen to have found the Lost Hex. What is the Lost Hex exactly? I don't know! This is something we never find out in the game itself, but according to Sonic Team, it is a continent that lies somewhere hidden in Sonic's world. But, wait, a continent? Wait a gosh darn second. The title of the game is... Oh no. Oh, what am I doing in my life? Sonic and Tails land on the Lost Hex where their goal is to find and rescue the rest of the animals Eggman kidnapped. I don't know how finding and beating up random pink homeless men without any context fits into that agenda, but, you know, Sonic's the hero, not me. It's not until later, when Sonic finally encounters Eggman again, that we are then actually introduced to the homeless man and the rest of his friends, whom Eggman has enslaved. Eggman introduces these guys as the Deadly Six, in that they are Sonic's worst enemies yet. Really? His worst enemies yet?
The present day, the here and now that you've stolen, time to take it back! I can't believe it!
Yeah, he's probably right. Yeah, he's probably right. Yeah. They are seemingly residents of the Lost Hex and are also known as the Zeti. Apparently, they are the only 6 Zeti to exist because we never encounter a single other one in the entire game. Maybe Zamom ate the rest. I mean, what? Before moving on, let's spend some time on their deep personalities and character traits. Crack addict, fat, Master Shifu, girl, Sonic fan, Bowser, and that about wraps up everything you need to know about the Zeti. Let's move on.
I know the perfect spot to take care of you. That's funny, because I know the perfect spot to kick you.
Get a room, you two.
Sonic and Tails return to the tornado after Tails is done making repairs. Despite us never seeing the plane again for the entire game, the two eventually encounter Eggman and the Zeti again. Prior to this part of the story, we learned that Eggman is controlling the Zeti through the use of a magic conch that is... I guess Sonic skipped past that cutscene, alright? The Zeti, no longer under Eggman's control, turn against him and take control of all of his robots, which is apparently something they can do. Sonic and Eggman then begrudgingly decide to team up with each other in order to stop the Zeti from destroying the world down below, using a machine they stole from Eggman that has the power to suck the life out of the entire planet. Probably shouldn't have left the keys for that thing behind, Eggman. From this point onward, the story is pretty formulaic. Sonic and gang move to the next area, he fights the area Zeti, and then they move on. Absolutely nothing actually happens in the story during this entire middle portion of the game, but there's still cutscenes. So how do we fill in the time with these cutscenes about nothing? Well, with pointless melodrama that leads absolutely nowhere, of course. Woo! Things stay pretty much entirely static like this for the rest of the game until...
Rotten.
What?
Tails acted for the greater good.
No.
I'm supposed to
No.
be the fastest, but I was too slow to save my buddy.
This little buddy, no. After that touching and brilliantly written scene, Sonic and Eggman continue forward only to learn from Zavok that the Zeti are gonna turn Tails into
A whole pack of robots.
Okay, fine, they're just gonna turn him into one robot. But where does that plot point go, you might ask? absolutely nowhere once again. The rest of the story consists of Sonic losing more and more of his allies, including Knuckles, Amy, and even Eggman. Wait, Knuckles and Amy? Yeah, the two of them show up occasionally in cutscenes via iPad FaceTime calls, which ultimately amounts to, say it with me now,
Nothing!
I don't really know why they're in the game at all, as they literally don't do a single thing, but I guess that's this game's main theme here. I guess they're here to give us perspective of what the Zeti are doing to the world down below, but they don't actually do anything other than stand around waiting for Sonic to help them. Sonic eventually encounters the supposed Tails robot, who is more like a cyborg than a robot, but I guess Japanese media in general does not know what a cyborg is. Earlier, we see Tails reprogrammed his robotic transformation to not affect his mind, so he turns the tide against the Zeti, allowing Sonic to finally defeat them once and for all. Thank God. And then fight Eggman again as the final boss anyway. Why? Because he's a dick. I don't know. Thus, wrapping up the thrilling tale of Sonic Lost World. It even ends with Sonic taking a nap. He must have been bored by this completely nothing story as well. This is probably the absolute worst story told in any 3D Sonic game, even including Forces. My biggest problem here is that just absolutely nothing actually happens throughout the entire runtime, outside of Sonic kicking away the conch that was controlling the Zeti, and the good guys teaming up with Eggman. It's just an excuse to have Eggman in the cutscenes alongside the heroes, which can admittedly include some witty dialogue. The writing overall is pretty damn cheesy and childish a lot of the time, and just boring at other times, especially whenever we only see the Zeti on screen. I'll admit though, I actually really enjoy Sonic's banter with each member of the Deadly Six throughout. Something about Sonic seeing through how absolutely shallow and stupid these characters are is just funny to me. And I think shows that the writers were at least somewhat self-aware of how lame each Zeti actually is. I do think this game has the strongest character interactions for this era of the series in general. Not that that's saying much considering the stories Lost World is competing with, but you know, we gotta take wins where we can take them, you know. I'll also say that I enjoy how the cutscenes are animated throughout. Nothing super crazy, but they are at least entertaining to watch and have way more movement in them compared to the other 2010s games. Like, look at Forces, for example. Like, what's Sonic doing there? Jesus. The voice acting is also pretty solid throughout. I mean, Roger's Sonic has never sounded this high-pitched before, and it's a little weird going back to it after playing Frontiers, but it's not bad. Mike Pollock as Eggman absolutely steals the show, however. The dude is hilarious in every cutscene.
Man up, Tails!
Eggman in general is honestly closer to the main protagonist than Sonic here. He and the Zeti have more of an actual mutual hatred for each other, and everything the Zeti are doing is because Eggman enslaved them in the first place. Also, just because I call him the protagonist doesn't mean he's the hero, just to avoid those comments, thanks. Sonic himself doesn't really do anything in the story outside of stopping the bad guys because that's his job. He has some minor forced character development about listening to those around him instead of just rushing into things, but that's about it. And, you know, this also was not a problem in previous games, but, you know, we, I guess, had to give him something to do in this lame story. So to sum up, the story is a lot of nothing with some occasionally funny dialogue. I was hoping upon reflection that I would enjoy this story more, but when I started recording footage for this video, I really realized and opened my eyes to how just mediocre it still is these days. But the story is not the reason why I love this game so much. It's the gameplay. So basically, the premise here can be entirely thrown out. That had the boost formula in it. Fuck. Okay, with the boost formula gone forever, let's just, see what we have left here. Like I alluded to earlier, we now have a much slower paced Sonic here that's more reminiscent of the gameplay in the earlier 3D games, but not quite the same as those games, where in those games Sonic would start running faster as he went downhill and slower as he went uphill. Instead, Sonic has 3 distinct speeds determined by a button press: walking, running, and spin dashing. Walking is only occasionally useful in 2D sections when you don't want to accidentally climb anything. The other 2 speeds are much more useful, where running is better to use when you're doing any actual platforming, and spin dashing is the best to get through straightaways. Also, to all of the people that praise the infinite spin dash from Sonic Frontiers, I'd just like to remind you that this game did it first. Our boy also has some brand new moves up his sleeve this time, including a homing attack that not only locks on to multiple enemies, that sometimes doesn't fucking work, but can also be charged as well to make defeating tough enemies and bosses a complete non-issue, which just makes how stupid the Deadly Six are in the story even funnier to me. They talk so much shit, but always get beaten by Sonic in a matter of seconds and then act so surprised when they lose. But at the very least, if the bosses had to be bad, they are quick and easy, unlike a certain other game I know. Getting back into the new moves, Sonic also has a brand new kick move that can stun enemies that do not go down to a simple homing attack. It just adds a little extra spice to fighting enemies here compared to earlier entries. The biggest new addition to Sonic's moveset in this game that I'm glad kinda made a return in Sonic Frontiers is his parkour abilities that allow him to climb and traverse vertical terrain. It can be a little tricky to get down at first, but once you understand how it works, it's really damn fun. This system, in combination with the infinite spin dash, is what really makes this game so special to me. You can find so many fun skips and ways to traverse levels in so many unintended ways when you gain mastery of these mechanics that makes running through and learning these levels so incredibly rewarding. So there's a lot of new mechanics here, but there's a huge problem that comes with them. And I think this problem is the precise aspect of why Sonic Lost World does not work for most people. There is no real incentive to learn most of these mechanics besides the homing attack and the kick. The game also just does a horrible job teaching the player about how to properly use any of these new moves. The only way to learn all of these more advanced techniques is by running into these tutorial prompts throughout the stages, but the text is often vague and doesn't explain things well because of that, and I guess as a failsafe, you at no point in the game ever need to use the charged homing attack, spin dash, or parkour. Until you suddenly do. In the final level of the game, you can only make it up these 2D slopes using the spin dash, which you had never needed to do before. The game also doesn't require parkour at any point in 3D, until the last level where you're suddenly expected to have mastered it. You need to use the charged homing attack during the second encounter with Zavok, which is near the end of the game, and I don't blame anyone for not understanding how to beat him because you just simply didn't need to use it before, which can make the fight hard for some people that don't know what they're doing. And you know what? That is okay. It's on Sonic Team for not teaching these mechanics properly. I don't think this was the best way to go about these mechanics. Why include them in the game, but then give no incentive to actually use, let alone even learn them, unless you are a player that went out of your way to teach yourself the mechanics and, kind of find the fun in the game yourself. This game should have included an actual tutorial segment that goes over these complicated new moves to give the player the proper tools they need to succeed, and then build levels around those challenges. Instead, what we actually have is a lot of levels that can come off as incredibly frustrating if you do not take the easy paths through them, aka using the wisps. The wisps here don't really act like they do in Sonic Colors, where there they are more so supposed to be an extension of Sonic's moveset that can help him find secrets and get through levels in unique ways. Here, wisps are almost entirely optional besides drill, and are more so used as a crutch to skip past areas where you'd otherwise have to use Sonic's other abilities. While we're on the subject, what even are most of these new wisps? Rhythm? Asteroid?
No, I missed.
Bomb? I like Eagle, but the rest are all pretty bad overall. Not a huge fan of any of these new wisps. But they let you skip things, so most first-timers often use these slow, pace-breaking wisps to get through tough sections instead of using Sonic's abilities, and miss out on a lot of the fun the game has to offer. Another thing that doesn't really help this game out is how loose Sonic's movement is here. I wouldn't say he's hard to control, but you do often have to rein him in, if that makes sense, especially in 3D platforming, which provides its own set of challenges that can frustrate first-timers. And I don't blame them for being frustrated. Like I said, the game does a terrible job explaining his abilities, but once you do learn them, once you do master them and start experimenting with what Sonic Lost World has to offer, it becomes one of the most satisfying experiences in the entire franchise. The more you play it, the more you'll learn to appreciate it. I'm not joking, once you take the time to master the ins and outs of Sonic's moveset, this game becomes an entirely different beast. What starts out as a slow-paced slog with confusing mechanics turns into a fast-paced playground of a game that lets you experiment in so many creative and unexpected ways. Did you know you could still use your full double jump after going off of a cliff during a spin dash? Or that you could continuously run along the same wall if you keep jumping back to it while parkouring? Or if you hold the proper button combination from a jump, you can do an instant spin dash from landing, keeping the pace going. There's so much nuance and mastery to Sonic's movement in this game that makes getting through each level a blast. And that's not to say how the levels themselves are all a ton of fun as well. When you stop using the wisps as a crutch and experiment with the moves given to you, what you'll find is that these levels encourage you to find so many fun ways to reach the end. Not only do the tubes you run along provide multiple ways to get through stages, giving you incentive to replay and experiment to find the best paths, but the 2D sections often reward the same experimentation with extra lives and faster hidden paths. I know one complaint about the tubes is that you usually just pick a path at the start and then only go down that one path for the rest of the tube, but when you start experimenting and switching between paths while on tubes, you'll find so much more fun creative ways to get through levels. I also need to commend the challenges and gimmicks in each level that are almost always vastly different from the last. One stage you're running through a vast wide open desert while avoiding giant worms. The next, you're running down a Mach speed section while diving past goofy bird robots. And then you're running on top of freaking Oreos in 2D, and that variety in gameplay never ends. All of the main levels challenge Sonic in fun and unique ways by introducing new gimmicks and enemies throughout, such as the... fuck, damn it. Let me try that again. Come on, damn it! Fuck! Funny Owl Robot, I've come to bargain. And while this opinion may be unpopular, I also really enjoy the more gimmicky stages as well. I think they act as a great way to break up the gameplay from the standard stages and are all a lot of fun in their own right. The one where you play Reverse Flappy Bird is a ton of fun, and honestly much better than any Sky Chase levels featured in other games. At least you're actually moving around pretty quickly, and dodging requires some timing. The two levels where you were grinding on rails the entire time are not only some of the most visually gorgeous stages in the entire game, but are also some of the most challenging and fun to speed run through with all of the risk taking involved. And I know one person that knows about the risks involved here.
You have to give up, dude.
Oh my god.
Dude, it's
No! I looked away for 1 second! No!
good times. While we're on the subject, that clip that you just saw was from the Sonic Lost World race that I and a bunch of other YouTubers participated in a few months back. I've been doing races with these guys for a long time now, but there wasn't one I practiced and prepared for more than this one, which explains my Steam time of this game. In fact, preparing for this race is where I further discovered just how deep this game can get, and now I have a speedrun time posted for this game on speedrun.com. The time I have posted is not my best. I ended up dying a few times in the run, but I just wanted to put something on speedrun.com. But I swear I always play better when I'm not recording, except for that little race I mentioned before.
Let's fucking go! Woo! We fucking did it, boys!
But yeah, I would consider myself a speedrunner of this game now, just because I find so much enjoyment in playing it. Overall, despite the issues that come from playing this game as a first-time player, I can't get myself to hate this game at all. I dare you to go into Skyroad Zone 2 while knowing how to use the spin dash properly, going through as fast as you can without getting hit, and tell me you are not having fun with the game, vibing with the visuals, and enjoying the absolute banger soundtrack. This game in general has such great music throughout the entire thing, and I think that the music helps set the stage for these gorgeous levels. Despite this game being over 10 years old at this point, it still holds up so well graphically. Yes, the art style is a lot simpler than previous and later Sonic games, but I think that works in its favor. I think these simplistic visuals help make the game pop out a lot more and kind of stand out among the crowd of Sonic games, and I just think everything about it's super cute. Just look at all the enemies in this game. They're just little dudes, you know? Despite my own personal feelings on Sonic Lost World, both Sonic fans and critics were not too friendly to this game upon releasing. This game really just came out at the worst possible time, in the worst possible form, on the worst possible console. Abandoning the boost formula so soon after Generations, when everyone was super excited to see what more Sonic Team was going to do with it, was not the right move, which is why they immediately reverted back to the boost formula after a short stint with Sonic Boom stuff, when they made Sonic Forces. This game is good, it's a ton of fun, but it did not help the Sonic series at all in general. To this day, it is still one of the worst selling Sonic games of all time. So in the end, would I ever want to see a game like Lost World ever again? I mean, no. I think the direction that Frontiers is taking the series in is much more interesting right now, and I honestly think that it took a lot of the best elements from Lost World and combined that with the best elements of the Boost formula to create what, in my personal opinion, is the best version of 3D Sonic ever, and I'm very excited to see where they take it with the next game. I love this game in a void, but I don't want to see anything like it ever again. Which I know is weird coming from a guy that has been defending this game throughout this entire video, but wait, what?
FBI, open up! We have reason to believe a Lost World guy has ruined modern Sonic!
Wait, what is happening?
That had the Boost formula in it.
Oh, shit.